I'm delighted to introduce Brent Spirit. I met Brent really because he was in a conference with Spiritual Awakenings International a couple weeks ago. I was very impressed with the way he introduced Kundalini and what he is doing right now. He has one website which is there to inform people about Kundalini and also offer various support services, which I feel are tremendously needed because more people are going through spiritual emergence. Some are having Kundalini experiences, and some become very distressed and really enter into a crisis because of things related to Kundalini. So welcome, Brent. I'm delighted that you're speaking here for IMHU.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here as well. It's a great honor.
Thank you. So maybe we could start, Brent, with your saying something about how you perceive Kundalini itself. It's a Sanskrit term, it comes from ancient India, and it's coming into the English language, but it's still Kunda what?
Yeah, it's quite a loaded term with a lot of history, a lot of different interpretations. There's of course even the brand Kundalini Yoga that's associated with it. A lot of different connotations, and it can be quite confusing. Me being practical, like you mentioned, working with people that are having difficult, challenging experiences to do with this thing called Kundalini, I prefer to just be practical and to take it in a more of a simple direction to say, hey, look, there seems to be what we may refer to as a force, an intelligence within the body that helps us to move through our evolutionary process in the direction of spiritual development. And we can call that Kundalini. We can refer to it as its full term out of India, Kundalini Shakti. I like to refer to it as Kundalini Shakti because it also incorporates that idea of Shakti, which is the Sanskrit term for the divine mother, the divine feminine. And it implies that there's an intelligence there. So it's not this impersonal force. It's actually quite intelligent. It's infinitely intelligent. It's the divine moving through us, and it's helping us to go to the next stage of our evolution. So when we refer to this idea of a Kundalini Shakti awakening, to me, it seems like the triggering of that next step in our transformational process that begins with the dawning of this rising of Kundalini, with the energy, the intelligence beginning to work through our system head to toe. Of course, that's my, like I said, more of a simple, practical approach. There's some sort of force unfolding an evolutionary process within the system, and we can refer to that as Kundalini Shakti.
Thank you. What drew you to get into this? It's pretty esoteric.
Yeah, very esoteric, and that's part of what drew me to it. But initially, I wasn't exploring anything esoteric. I was just very depressed and anxious as a teenager. I sat down to meditate, not with any real spiritual inclination. I just wanted to see if I can, just find some peace. And when I sat down to meditate, I began to experience what we call in Sanskrit and yoga, spontaneous kriyas. So my spine began to bend and move on its own in this one meditation. And I didn't know what this was. Of course, like I was just sharing, this was the beginning of this process of this force of Kundalini moving through my system. It began to bend my spine. It began to intelligently move my body in a way that I guess was supporting the next stage of my transformation, which I had triggered just by closing my eyes and turning inward in meditation. So from there, I guess the process was underway, and I didn't know it at the time. And because I didn't know it, I was struggling. I was confused. I was putting things in my body that weren't supporting it. I wasn't really collaborating and cooperating with this evolutionary process that I was unknowingly going through. And that led to all sorts of difficulty, all sorts of confusion. There was some isolation. Then when I eventually realized, I was going through something spiritual, there was periods of thinking, that I was one of very, very few people on earth to ever go through this. So maybe there was some sense of inflation that came with that. All sorts of challenges came across the board from this process. There was emotional and psychological purging. There was moving into deep, deep, expansive states of consciousness without much meditation practice. And all of this was very new and unusual to me. And because I was so challenged by the process, I began to pick up some things along the way. I began to explore some teachings and some teachers, and to also cultivate a pretty strong intuition to figure things out with the inner guidance. And eventually, I sort of put the pieces together and realized, I think part of my mission here in this life is to blow the lid on this Kundalini thing and to support others that maybe also like me having this happen to them spontaneously without really knowing much about what's really going on with them.
Wow. So I know a lot of people, when they start having phenomena that we connect with Kundalini, do feel a sense of isolation. Sometimes they feel like, oh my God, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I shouldn't talk to people about this. And so that thought in itself tends to isolate people. And sometimes people also feel ashamed, like, oh my God, this is not good. I shouldn't be having this. There's something wrong with me. I'm ashamed. And so that can lead even to more isolation. And it's so wonderful that you're normalizing this process, and also through your website, KundaliniAwareness.org, that you're leading people into just becoming educated about it, recognizing it's normal, it goes through all cultures. But on the other hand, it's still pretty esoteric. And do you think that there are more people now on the face of the earth who are having these experiences for some reason, and that we really need places where people can go to get support and education?
Yeah, there's definitely an apparent increase in the amount of people that are having these experiences. And I think um, that's as a consequence of a variety of different things. One of them we could say is the internet. The internet has, connected all of us. Whereas in the past, we probably could only explore the spiritual teachings within our close vicinity. Whereas now, we can have multiple tabs open from teachings and traditions from around the world, and we can get some really potent, powerful spiritual teachings as well. Those teachings have sort of made their way into the Western paradigm through mindfulness practices. Like I said, I was just trying to practice mindfulness meditation to find relief from stress and anxiety and depression. I had no idea that this was associated with a rich history of spiritual transformation. And as we know now, mindfulness is, it's on the cover of magazines and everybody's practicing it and talking about it. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Mindfulness definitely can improve, things like anxiety, for example, but it can also be very powerful and trigger these awakenings. And I think many are having spiritual transformations as a result of exploring things like mindfulness. The psychedelic movement is once again in full force, with a lot of great studies happening, a lot of people doing great work to, present psychedelics and plant medicine as being a powerful healing tools. Once again, for things like, say, trauma, right? To maybe enhance creativity, of course, very effective, but also to trigger this next stage in our evolutionary process, Kundalini. So that's something that's happening to many people as well. Here in Canada, cannabis, marijuana is completely legal. We've got stores all around where people can buy a joint and smoke and enjoy. But of course, that too can also trigger profound spiritual awakenings and profound energetic shifts within the body. And I think, and not even I think, I've been in touch with people that just said, "Hey, I was just hanging out on the weekend, you know, getting high with some friends, having a good time, and suddenly I'm having a Kundalini awakening." So I think there's many reasons for why this is happening on the planet. I think also it's a time now that it's necessary. It's just necessary, because of all of the different challenges that are happening within society, there's you could say an economic crisis, a climate crisis, a political crisis. There's all sorts of things. I think this is the next step in our evolution as a collective as well, moving towards a more holistic, interconnected way of being. And I think Kundalini is the driving force that will bring us there. Maybe not all of us all at once. I don't think it's like going to be so widespread, but widespread enough that we need to be talking about this much, much more.
Thank you so much. Would you like to say something about KundaliniAwareness.org so people know what resources are available there?
Yeah, so KundaliniAwareness.org was a website that I created with the intention of putting together a bit of a landing page or a hub where individuals that, like you mentioned, are feeling isolated, feeling confused, they can go and they can find some validation. So we've got a directory of licensed mental health professionals and physicians with direct personal Kundalini awakening experience themselves. So in that directory, clients, individuals can maybe find somebody to work with themselves, but also the director, I think, speaks volumes. It says, hey, look at all of these credentialed, educated, grounded, scientifically minded people that are coming forth and saying, hey, this is a real valid thing. I've experienced it myself. So that's pretty, says quite a bit, I think, the directory alone. As well, we've got a collection of stories submitted by individuals about their Kundalini awakening experience in a reflective way. So if you'd like to check out some of those stories, perhaps you may find a story that you can relate with and say, hey, I'm not the only one who've had these types of experiences. If you have a story yourself, please consider submitting it. As well, if you happen to be a licensed mental health professional, please submit an application to grow the directory. We've also got a list of resources, books, and videos. Emma Bragdon, of course, is featured there with some of her books. Some of her talks are featured there in the list of resources. Many other books as well, written in a sort of a scientific, sound, grounded way, saying, hey, Kundalini is a valid thing. This is something that we should be talking more about. And in the future, we're planning to also incorporate some trainings for some other professionals who would like to develop their skills and understanding around Kundalini awakening to support one another. So the aim is to present it in a way that's digestible, that perhaps you can share with your doctor, you can share with your therapist or your partner or your friend and say, hey, look, this is what I'm experiencing. Here's a website where people are talking about it more. And, I'm not just making it up. I'm not crazy. There's something going on here that we should all consider because, of course, we all have the potential to go through this process. And I don't think it's something that we should dismiss so easily.
No, and in fact, the ancient rishis speak about moving into the Dwapara age, which has to do with this evolution that you're speaking about. And so there's been recognition for over 3,000 years in India about this evolutionary time that we're going through right now. We're in transition. So I want to thank you, Brent, for your presence and giving us your instructions about Kundalini and also about your fabulous website. I wish you very well with it, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.